Senator Hughes.
Thank you, Mr Deputy President. And kudos, Senator McGrath, for going through some of those questions. But I don't even think you really touched on my personal favourite of the questions that has been asked, because I'm actually reasonably sure, whilst this question was asked of the Prime Minister, I'm even going to give him credit. This is probably not something he was personally responsible for. But I am reasonably confident that these details are able to be provided pretty easily, pretty quickly by his EA, by anyone in his office, because I know when I have hosted a function, all of these details are immediately available. So, following on from Senator McGrath, the question asked by my good friend Senator Michaelia Cash to the Minister representing the Prime Minister on the 25th of August 2022, this question was asked twice. Question on notice number 289 and question on notice number 326. With reference to any functions, official or unofficial receptions or other events hosted by ministers, assistant ministers or their departments in their portfolio since 1 June 2022, can the following information be provided for each function? A, the name of the function. B, list of attendees, including departmental officials and members of the ministerial staff. C, function venue. D, itemised list of cost. E, details of any food served. F, and this is my personal favourite, details of any alcohol served, including brand and vintage. And G, details of any entertainment provided, because we know that those opposite have never seen a trough deep enough to get their snout in as quickly as possible. And I'm sure that those briefs, which would actually be sitting in someone's drawer already sorted, because that's the sort of information you get every time you host any sort of function, particularly in Parliament House, all of this information is provided to you. Certainly the name of guests. You do not turn up to a function as a backbencher in the opposition without knowing who's going to be at events. And there is no way the Prime Minister is turning up at any function, nor any of his ministers or assistant ministers are turning up at any events without a list of all attendees. That would just be part of the event brief. But any event that they've ordered and they've organised would have all of that information. And I have no doubt that one of the reasons they don't want to provide this, because none of this information has been provided, because the vintage Moet that they probably served may not align with the alleged blue-collar working values that they purport to support. The fact that that snout has delved into the trough well and truly within the first, I'd like to say 120 days. I would have given it 120 minutes and they'd have been in. Within 120 minutes, the taxpayer-funded French champagne would have been provided. I mean, aside from the fact they don't even support Australian winemakers, except Senator Farrell, we've got to give him credit for the godfather. That's why they dined at Otis. The Otis Group was only there because the only restaurant in Canberra to serve Senator Farrell's own wine. So we know Senator Farrell has an interest in the domestic wine market, particularly when it's supporting his own winery. But I think in any other instance, we know those opposite, and those particularly at the far left of the chamber, love a good drop of a vintage French. But of course, these are the people who are all do as I say, not as I do, who we've been listening to bleat on about they were going to be the bastions of integrity, the bastions of transparency and honest government and lifting the standards. There were going to be no more mean girls. Everyone was going to be giving each other big hugs, all kumbaya. There wasn't going to be the tearing down. It was all going to be about support. It was all going to be love-ins. I've got a 2-minute statement tomorrow, and we've actually just lost a long-standing member of the Liberal Party, so I may give credit to him tomorrow. But because what I was planning to come and do was actually just read out some of the misogynistic tweets I've received in the last 7 days, because I actually thought it'd be interesting to see how the tone of politics has improved since the Albanese government has come in and called for this kinder parliament, because I can tell you it has got worse. And not only has it got worse for Conservative women, not only has it got worse, I mean, I've got to tell you, there is a meme that's come out today and it's hilarious. I mean, I think it's great. It's me, Bronwyn Bishop and Prue McSween, and it's asking where's the factory that produces these. And as I said replied to it, well, that must have been in response to who are your dream dinner party guests. But, you know, then I got another one that has Bronwyn Bishop and John Howard had a love child with a very flattering photo of me, which I sent to former Prime Minister Tony Abbott, because we know he always claimed to be their love child, and he responded to me going, well, congratulations, the family's clearly expanding. But I digress. We're now talking about the tone, the parliamentary tone. But I'll tell you where we are going to see a tone towards women absolutely descend. And we know where women are going to be starting to be treated even worse than Conservative women in this place and in the sewer of Twitter, etc., will be on work sites around this country, because we know those opposite are all talk but all delivery when it comes to union policy. As soon as John Setka gave you the call, as soon as those election results were in and John Setka was on the phone, you lot, quick as a flash, quick, let's get rid of that ABCC. We've got to get rid of any security for women on building sites. We've got to get rid of any security for workers on building sites that don't subscribe to the CFMEU. Oh, we know how many hearings there's been, how many cases there's been, how the CFMEU just sees these fines as the cost of doing business. The most appalling treatment of women on building sites. But we also know that we hear them bleat on about cost of living. There's a housing shortage. We need to boost the building sector. But how's this going to help? We're going to see building companies struggle even further to attract workers, to maintain workers, to keep their workplaces going and work sites operating, as the unions are given even more overreach and power. And this is only going to get worse. And if you don't think housing costs are going to increase, if you don't think building costs for businesses and commercial properties are going to increase, you guys live in la-la land. You guys, everything you do, you're making a bad situation worse. You add to inflationary pressures through every decision you make because you don't understand consequences. You just think, oh, well, we'll do what Mr Setka tells us and everything will be okay. No, it won't. Building costs are going to go sky high. We're going to see inflation follow through. We're going to see further pressure go on families trying to find housing. It's the same as what you're doing with the CDC, and you know that because you've now put $50 million more into drug and alcohol services. You know that there are going to be consequences for Indigenous families, particularly women and children, but you won't ever acknowledge it. You're just going to crawl back under some rock and pretend you don't know what's happening. Because over there, you don't understand consequences. All talk, no action unless your union bosses tell you it's okay to do so. Absolutely appalling. But we do know that you're very big on action if it comes to photo shoots. We do know you're very big on action if it comes to overseas trips. Because interestingly, we're all back this week and we've got people here in the gallery, and what they don't understand, potentially you may not know, there was absolutely a number of weeks that we could have come back to make up for the week that we had with the Queen's passing. But no, the new Albanese government, who claimed they were going to be family-friendly, all about work-life balance, decided with very short notice they were going to put the first sitting week on the first week of school holidays. They also put the public holiday on last Thursday. Now, why was it last Thursday? Lots of people wonder. Well, what a lot of people don't know is that Friday, in Victoria, there already was a public holiday for the AFL. And today, there's a public holiday in WA. So Thursday kind of worked because Mr Albanese was back from overseas, and so didn't upset the Victorians because they didn't lose a public holiday, didn't upset the West Australians because they didn't lose a public holiday, but upset an awful lot of businesses, but also upset a lot of families because all of a sudden, my case, I had a daughter, had to come home a day early from boarding school. You had parents had to find something to do with their kids on the Thursday to send them back on the Friday for the last day of school. But what you don't know is Mr Albanese, who's so big about transparency and getting through all this legislation, he's not even here for the next 2 days. So why he's picked this week to come back when we actually have another 4 weeks that we could have used to come back, because there are so little sitting days that you have allocated, that the Labor Party has allocated so few sitting days and pulled all the dates back because you cannot face the scrutiny. You will not answer the questions when they're put on notice, and you do not like the transparency. You will keep us out of Parliament as often as you can because you do not want to answer the questions. I mean, that is so obvious in this place. with 4 ministers only in the Senate, and clearly your ministers in the other chamber not providing substantial briefs, because all we ever hear from ministers, not my job, or I'm not the minister for, that never washed when we were sitting on that side of the House. I can tell you, I remember watching a number of my colleagues sitting here coming in with their folders. Hilariously, you could barely see them. I mean, thank goodness we had COVID, because they had the seat next to them was empty for about the 19 folders that they had, which, you know, in the case of Michaelia, I think required about Senator Cash about 6 staff to carry them, because they probably weighed about 4 times as much as she did. But that was because we had staff that had effectively briefed her, that had provided information, so that when those opposite were sitting on this side of the House and questions were asked, we could answer them. Our ministers were briefed, even if it wasn't their direct portfolio responsibility. They had done the work. They had been briefed, and they understood under this system of government they have responsibilities for ministers that sit in the other place. So they could answer the question. As Senator Birmingham could answer the questions when he was asked, representing the Prime Minister, because he had been briefed. What we hear in this place when we ask questions to the Prime Minister, well, I don't even know what we hear. I mean, if anyone can tell me what some of those words were today, I'm not 100% sure. There's no answers. There's a killing of time and, an inaudible amount of waffle, and then you kind of get a bit of a mumble. I mean, absolutely nothing that makes sense to anyone that would be listening at home with those sentences that would have passed the most basic of English exam. But yet this passes somehow for an answer from a minister in the Senate from this government. You know, this government comes in here and is talking to us about how they are this fantastic government, 120 days, they've done so much, achieved so much, talked about their job summit. What job summit? Like, they've talked about a job summit. They came into government with the lowest unemployment rate in 50 years. And it wasn't a job summit that you needed to find work for people. You need to find the Labor people. And when you make people unsafe on workplaces, when you put the unions back in charge, who represent 10% of the workforce but give them 33% of the seats, when you've got over 50% of Australians employed by small business, yet you give small business one seat at the table, how do you think you're going to actually attract the Labor? You're not. All you are doing is working to detract Labor. You are working to do everything you can to deter people from wanting to go and work in these industries, because they will be bullied. They will be harassed, they will be intimidated, and the CFMMU will look at that and go, that's all right, it's all par for the course. That's all right, we'll pay for it, it's all good. We still get what we want, and our blokes are in there now who we give millions of dollars to, and they'll just continue to deliver what we want. So you lot, you're all do as I say, not as I do, and very, very soon the Australian people are going to start to see through it.